Hey guys, it's Matt, and I'm here to tell you about yet another podcast. I thought I didn't have enough, so I started a new show with Joe Farron of Fright School, who you've heard on this very podcast before. And we are watching The OC. We call it White People Problems. It's available everywhere that podcasts are. So go and subscribe. And if you don't believe me on how fun this show is, enjoy a free little 10-minute taste of episode 1. Thanks for checking it out. Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
Matt, I'm doing all right. I am appropriately fine, as your dear friend Eric says.
Yeah, we're appropriately fine. I decided I didn't have enough podcasts under my belt.
True.
And I've been looking for any excuse to watch The OC. And I know that you love The OC.
I do.
And I knew that if you don't mind us opening this can of worms right out the gate, you're going through something that usually requires an OC rewatch.
Yeah, there's a whole story. There's a whole story to the OC and why I watch it when I'm going through something difficult. So recently, my boyfriend of almost 3 years became an ex-boyfriend. Yeah, it's fine. It's his loss.
Agreed.
It's okay. I'm feeling very Taylor Swift about it. You know, I'll release an album later and it'll be fine. This is what happens when you fuck with creative people. Like, you end up living forever and not in a good way.
Exactly.
But yeah, so about over a decade ago, I was actually thinking about it in preparation for our session today. And over a decade ago, I had such very strong feelings for a close friend of mine. And it was it was the first time I'd ever felt so strongly about someone that was more than just pure lust. Like it was like I imagined a life together with him. And, I was in my early 20s and it was the first time that I ever experienced that. So it was very, very, very difficult. And we went through a friend breakup because he was straight. He's a straight man. So that was part of the complex nature of it all. But we went through a friend breakup and it was difficult for me to understand what that was. And this was at a time, over 10 years ago when streaming wasn't really a thing, was sort of a thing, not really. And I happened to have all the seasons of The OC on DVD. Now, I had never watched The OC past season 1 live. So I'd watched season 1 live when it was on Fox, and then every season I just caught when I could. All the other episodes I caught when I could, but I had the DVDs with me, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start watching them, and that's how I kind of laid and worked through my way through the stages of grief, was to work through the seasons of the OC and
the 4 seasons of grief.
Yeah, exactly anger, depression, and it was it's very of its time period. It's such an easy thing just to get lost in, and it like jumps the shark various times in various seasons, several times in various seasons.
Here's a hot take. I think it jumps and then gets off of jumping the shark a couple times just in the first episode.
Yes.
My mood went from like I hate this to I love this like 3 different times in episode 1. I feel like it finds its footing by episode 2.
Yes.
But
it knows what it wants to be. It knows it definitely is like when you're watching it, you're like, I am watching the trailer, right? Like I feel like I'm watching an episode long trailer.
Yes, so I want it to in the name of solidarity, what I would have loved to have been able to do is experience this for the first time the same way you did through DVDs. And I thought that God had blessed me with a gift when I was at a Goodwill the other day and saw all 4 seasons sitting on a shelf and said, this is a sign. And then I pulled them off the shelf to see that the Goodwill had individually marked them at $14 per season. And I was like, I ain't paying no $14 for a used DVD of the OC when I know that shit is on HBO Max right now.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, that's what, maybe $6 less, for
To
$5
buy it
less than
new
what it
on
would have gone
Amazon.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
exactly. No, to buy it, like, new from Sam Goody,
yeah.
like, I'm like, "No, no way, there's absolutely
Four,
not." So,
14 could be a reasonable price for all 4 seasons combined, but like
yeah.
individually each, no thank you, Goodwill. What are you doing out there in these
I
streets
would
with
have
those
said, like, "I'll
prices?
give you 16 for all 4 seasons,"
Yeah.
like, that because the season 4 by far has the fewest episodes out of all of them because they were over it by
Yeah.
that point.
Well, and that's so bringing up episode count, that's the other exciting thing because I'm sure that some of you are sitting there going, Matt Kelly and Joe, what the fuck are you thinking adding more podcasts on your plate? And I think that one of the things we were thinking is 92 episodes and then we're done with this show.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah, it kind of pisses me off a little bit that they didn't just try to, like, pump out 8 episodes,
Just to
but,
get that
like,
smooth 100. Yeah, that
yeah, but,
syndication
like, by the
number.
time you get to season 4, though, like, you'll by the end of season 3, you will be like, you will also be ready
Yeah.
for the end of this.
I've heard that from not just you, but multiple other people that I've told that we're doing this journey. I should give a quick disclaimer up front, though. So for the people who are listening to this, in the name of the crazy schedule that Joe and I have, we are bulk recording a lot of episodes, and that means that for pretty much I would guesstimate the entire run of this podcast, we're always going to be a couple months behind what's happening in the real world. And I say that just because, we might make references to things that end up feeling dated by the time this episode comes out. And, just give us some grace. And Joe, I'm curious, do you think Betty White's going to make it to be 100 years old or like,
I was gonna say, it's like, I'm planning this trip to Ukraine in a little bit. I can't wait to go.
do you think King Charles will ever get to be in charge of the throne or like,
Yeah,
what's
exactly. Basically, what Matt is like has beautifully said is, please don't cancel us because we're doing our best
yeah.
to try to keep the illusion that this is a weekly thing.
Yeah, if God
So
forbid something happens to Adam Brody months after I record an episode saying Adam Brody is just a perfect human being, I don't need you like coming at me to let me know like what about this newspaper article that came out yesterday where he said this really deflammatory thing, and I'm like, well,
yeah, like, we don't leave us alone. We're doing our best. Case in point, here's a fun example. Case in point, Fright School. My other podcast, Fright School, right now out now on the Geekscape Network. We did every January we do a franchise, and in January of 2021 we did The Purge, which, if you remember, January 2021, there was, this thing called the insurrection that was like our own like real life purge. So, and we recorded in bulk
yeah,
the
those
first two
episodes
episodes.
felt they felt weirdly prescient
Yes.
listening to them. All right, I think that we've given a good example of what this show is. You've come up with the name of this show, which we're calling White People Problems, and within 2 episodes, that's all I've watched so far is 2 episodes. I get it.
White people problems. Yeah, so white people problems comes from the idea that, like, as I'm watching this, it's like it's part wish fulfillment but also just part diversion, and there's nothing quite like getting lost in like the white people problems of the residents of Newport Beach with their too much money and horses with alopecia and potential insider trading and securities fraud and the all these things. So that's why I was like, we should do this and we should do it this way, because this is exactly how I see the show, is that it's more a commentary on class than anything, because when everybody's white, the only thing you can really talk about is class.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. So I hit play on this episode, and there's no credits, nothing. We get a cold open right out
Yeah.
the gate, and the first line of dialogue is already exposition, and I'm rolling my eyes where he's just like, as your big brother, which is a sentence that I have never once, as a big brother to 3 siblings, I have never started a sentence stressing, well, as your big brother, I think it's time that I blah, 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 blah.
See, but like you're gonna do that now, aren't you?
Oh,
You're
all the
like
time.
gonna find a way to shoehorn it in as your uncle, like speaking to as ex family member.
Yeah. This is a very dramatic opening sequence, and something that I pieced together right away is one of the first shows that you introduced me to. And it's worth bringing it up because it's also a little bit of the inspiration for this podcast was the Gilmore Girls and thus also the Gilmore Guys podcast.
Hmm.
I noticed one of the big differences is that I would say that Gilmore Girls was a comedy show that occasionally had dramatic beats, and I very quickly learned that the OC is a dramatic show that sometimes has comedic beats.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.